This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nizzanotes, and it's Saturday. That means it's time for Nizzanotes, my weekly vlog series about limited magic. Today, I wanted to talk about what a bomb means, what it is in limited. I think it's an important thing to know, mostly because, if people are giving you shorthand advice on what you should do in limited, usually the first thing is that you pick bombs, right? Those are the most powerful cards, generally speaking. At least that's what they're supposed to be, and that's kind of why I made this video. I've heard the word bomb sort of devalued over the years in limited. I've heard people use it for a really wide variety of cards, and you can have whatever definition of bomb you want, but it does become a problem when, you hear other people using the word and they're really only referring to a much more narrow number of cards than you are if you have a definition of bomb where it's just like a big creature with trample or something like that. So I wanted to talk about the three things that make a card a bomb, sort of define it, and then we're also going to look at some cards, some of which are bombs, I think anyway, and some of which aren't bombs, and I'm going to explain why they are and aren't bombs as we go through them. So I came up with three criteria that are necessary for a card to be a bomb. First, it has to be a powerful effect. That much is clear, right? I think most people would agree that a bomb is powerful. It's just sort of a gauge on how powerful to some extent. And it's important to note that there are cards that do have powerful effects, but they're still not bombs. And that's because they don't necessarily meet the second and third criteria that I'm going to mention. Second, it has to be good pretty much no matter what the game state is. In other words, for a card to really be a bomb, it has to be highly effective whether you're behind or ahead or at parity. If a card doesn't do those things, generally speaking, it's probably not a bomb. If a card's only good when you're ahead, definitely not a bomb. And even if a card's really only good when you're behind, it isn't necessarily a bomb either because, there are going to be situations where you need to press your advantage, and only having a card that's good when you're behind is problematic. So the card has to have a powerful effect. It has to be good at any phase of the game and regardless of what, is going on for you, whether you're ahead, behind, or at parity. And then the last thing is that generally a bomb has to do something that gives you some permanent value, even if it's dealt with right away. And what I mean by this is that a card generally can't be a bomb if it can simply be answered by a removal spell, right? Like if it can be answered by a bunch of removal spells in the format and you're either behind after that removal spell gets played or at parity, it's hard for me to think of that card as a bomb, at least a top level bomb. The best cards, the ones that really are bombs, are the ones that have a fail case that's still like a 2-for-1 in your favor, where, the best bombs are cards where you look at them and you're like, okay, if my opponent doesn't kill this, they're dead. And if they do kill it, I get a 2-for-1. That's sort of what I'm talking about when I say, it gives you some sort of value no matter what, even in the worst case scenario. For me, a bomb, I give A's, to cards in my set reviews that meet these criteria, basically. And there just aren't that many cards in most sets that are bombs. Some sets have more of them, some sets have fewer, but the point is, there just aren't that many of them. So, there aren't that many cards you can actually realistically say, this is a bomb and limited about. So, those are the three criteria. Now we're going to look at some specific cards, all of which are cards that I've heard somebody call a bomb, whether in Twitch chat or on the YouTube comments or in person or whatever. So, I'm basing these all on things that I've actually heard people say about these cards. I'm not just sort of pulling them out of nowhere. Some of them are bombs and some of them aren't. So, to start with, also I should note these are all from relatively recent sets. I think it made the most sense to do that since, they're recent cards. First up, I've got Witch King of Aomer. So this is a 5-mana 5/3 flyer. So if we just stop there, that's not a bomb, right? I mean, it's something that can easily be answered by removal. It does have reasonably efficient stats, and it would be a good card, but bomb is a whole level above good card. Good card does not equal bomb, right? So if we stop there, this would definitely not be a bomb. But of course, as you probably know, this has a bunch more text, including the fact that you can discard a card to make it indestructible. So having a thing that's very, very difficult for your opponent to kill that also has efficient stats, that's already pretty much a bomb. I mean, I think it is a bomb. If this didn't have the middle line of text we haven't covered yet, we're already talking about a bomb because it's hard to kill and it has efficient stats. It's very difficult for your opponent to deal with it. and that makes it quite impressive. But on top of all of that, what really pushes it into like insane bomb territory is the fact that whenever one or more creatures deals combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn, and then the ring tempts you. So it gives you insane value, even if you're behind, right? You play this, it's a very good blocker because you can make it indestructible without having to pay any mana. Also, your opponent attacking you is a nightmare for them because they're going to lose creatures when they do it. You're also going to advance, the ring's going to tempt you, you're going to get some value out of that. And then if you're at parity or ahead, you can just go on offense very easily with this and quickly end the game. So it's hard to kill, has efficient stats, and then it has this whole other effect that also makes it hugely problematic for your opponent, really no matter what stage of the game is in. So next, I have Fangorn Tree Shepherd. This is a 7 mana 4/10. Those are some interesting stats. Gives your tree folk, including itself, vigilance. Whenever one or more tree folk you control attack, you add twice that much green mana to your mana pool, and you don't lose unspent green mana as steps and phases end. This is definitely not a bomb. It doesn't really do much in limited. This is the kind of card people, I think they see big stats and they see a rare, and you'll have people say, that's a bomb because you put this body on the board, and it's not like it doesn't literally do nothing, right? A 4/10 on the board makes a difference. It is huge and everything, but it just doesn't do enough to really reach bomb status. And in fact, this card overall hasn't even been that good in the format. Most of the problem is that actually getting this tree folk synergy to matter doesn't come up that much, and also any of these effects that lets you hold on to a ton of mana just don't matter very much in limited, and that's certainly true of this one. But big creature with cool stats does not equal a bomb. In limited, Fangorn is not a card that should be considered a bomb. Next up, there's Aomer, Marshal of Rohan. This costs 2 generic and 2 red for a 4/4 with haste. It has an ability that almost never comes up. Not never, but almost never. Whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control dies, you get to have another combat phase. So, also, not a bomb. This is a good card, unlike Fangorn, which we just saw. A 4 mana 4/4 with haste has great stats. It's a powerful card, but it's not a bomb. It can be easily answered by removal. It doesn't do anything to generate any sort of permanent value for you that will make it so you come out ahead whether it lives or dies. Having haste does help a little there. Haste, sometimes you can look at it as that sort of effect because it's going to give you an attack most of the time. But I don't quite think a 4 mana 4/4 with haste can so consistently get in a good attack when you play it that you can look at it as a card that's always going to give you at least some value. And besides, just doing damage to your opponent or getting them to chump block isn't exactly the kind of value that makes a card feel like a bomb anyway. This other effect it has is interesting, but it's also very easy for your opponents to just not ever let it trigger, and so it mostly doesn't come up. Next, let's look at Sauron the Dark Lord. So for 3 generic, a blue, a black, and a red, we're talking about a 7/6, and it has Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. So already we're talking about a 6 mana 7/6 that is very hard to kill. So hard, in fact, that its Ward says, if you're going to kill me, you have to 2-for-1 yourself. So we're already talking about a card that can get pretty close to being a bomb. It's probably not quite one all on its own because it's not like a 7/6, vanilla 7/6 is that powerful, but he's not vanilla. He has all this other stuff going on that's incredibly good, and he's very difficult to kill. The only way you can kill him is generally by 2-for-1ing yourself because you have to sacrifice a permanent in play and spend a removal spell in your hand to kill him. But the other effects, like I said, you've got whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. So this is another thing that sort of fits into that bucket of thing that this card will do, even in a worst case scenario. Well, in addition to the fact that your opponent has to 2-for-1 themselves to kill it, you also get to amass orcs 1 if they're able to remove Sauron right away, which means you're either getting a 1/1 token or adding a +1/+1 counter to something you have in play. So that's pretty good. Then also, it's got some big army upside where anytime an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. So, that means if you're ahead and they don't kill it, you can end up generating a lot of extra value with a potentially large army and getting the ring to tempt you. And also, in addition to having a built-in ring tempt in the card's text, it also has a payoff, which lets you discard your hand and draw 4. So obviously this is a bomb, right? It just does so much stuff. We have as the, complete fail case here is my opponent 2-for-1s themselves, and I get a 1/1. So that's the fail case. That doesn't mean you're unbeatable if your opponent kills it, but it means you're coming out ahead every time your opponent deals with Sauron. And if they don't deal with Sauron, you're going to get increasingly large creature tokens, you're going to get the Ring to tempt you, and you're going to draw your whole deck. So this is the kind of card that is like, a poster boy, I guess is the term, right? Poster boy of being a bomb. Because it just does everything. It wins the game if your opponent doesn't deal with it, and even if they do deal with it, it doesn't feel very good for them. All right, next, let's look at Stoke the Flames. So, yeah, 2 mana, 2 generic, 2 red, does 4 to any target, and it has Convoke. So this is a really great card. But I do hear people sometimes say that, it's almost like they use bomb to mean like best uncommon or good uncommon, because I've heard people say like, bomb uncommon about a card like this, and maybe they mean like it's a bomb as far as uncommons go, but that just seems confusing to me. It's just really good removal. It's premium removal. It's amazing, but you know what it's not the only way things can go. It's not the maximum upside, but generally when you cast a removal spell like this, you're just getting a 1-for-1, which, you can get a really efficient one thanks to Convoke and stuff like that, and that's amazing. But cards that are just 1-for-1s generally can't really be bombs because they have to be doing something that generates more value than just breaking even on cards. And so premium removal, even the best removal spells in most formats aren't bombs. If we're talking about removal that like kills multiple things or divides damage, that's when things get into bomb territory. But a card like Stoke the Flames just isn't there. Similarly, I also want to talk about Kenra Spell Spear. This was a really good uncommon, although kind of performed a little less amazingly than people expected, but it was really good. If you look at this card, it starts out as a 2 mana 2/2 with Trample and Prowess. That's an amazing 2-drop. But it can also transform into a Trample Ward 2 3/3 with Prowess twice. So yeah, this thing is incredibly efficient, and it does generally stay relevant all game long. And once it has Ward, if you can transform it, it does become hard enough to kill that it becomes more of a problem. But we're mostly still just talking about a card that is really efficient and really good at, especially in the early stage of the game. But it does stay relatively relevant all game long. But it's not a bomb. It's a good creature. It's one of the better uncommons in red in March of the Machine. That doesn't make it a bomb or even close to one. It's just a very good card. All right, let's look now at Boonebringer Valkyrie. So this is 3 generic and 2 white for a 4/4 with backup 1, and it has flying, first strike, and lifelink. Backup means it can put a counter on a thing, and that thing gains all of its keyword, well, all abilities, but in this case, it's just keyword abilities until the end of that turn. So it can put the counter on itself, but generally, for Boonebringer Valkyrie to be at its best and really feel like a bomb, what it needs to be doing is coming down and putting a counter on something else and giving that thing flying, first strike, and lifelink until end of turn. If you're doing that, which isn't that hard, you just have some other creature in play, put the counter on it, it can attack right away. That means Boonebringer Valkyrie gives you value immediately, and even though that creature doesn't hold on to these keyword abilities, that counter does stick around. So even if your opponent can kill Boonebringer Valkyrie right away, you end up with a counter and an attack that is almost assuredly effective thanks to these keyword abilities. So, maybe it's not quite as insane as what happens to your opponent when they kill Sauron, but we are talking about a card that gives you permanent value, swings the game in your favor the turn it comes down, regardless of whether it lives until your next turn. And that, for me, is definitely a bomb. Let's look now at Glissa, Herald of Predatory. So 3 generic, a black and a green. It's a 3/5. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you have 3 options. You can incubate 2 twice, you can transform all your incubators, or you can give Phyrexians you control first strike and death touch until end of turn. So, yeah. If your opponent kills her before you get to go to combat, she's not going to feel like a bomb. But your opponent often isn't able to do that, and most of the time, you're going to be able to go to combat, and you're going to be able to get value out of her. If you just incubate 2 twice, you're already way ahead of your opponent if they do end up killing her, because you have 2 2/2s. I mean, you have to spend some mana on them to actually make them into 2/2s, but that's fine. You have permanent value left on the board. Furthermore, if they don't kill Glissa, she's just going to keep generating tokens, she can transform them, and then she can give them all first strike and death touch until end of turn, which means they're unblockable. So, no matter what happens with Glissa, again, unless your opponent has the mana available and the exact card available to kill her before you go to combat, you're going to get permanent value, and if your opponent doesn't kill her, you're just going to win. All right, let's talk about Gloomfang Mahler now. So this is another card that's in this category of, yeah, it's big, and it does do stuff. And this one even gives you some permanent value because it has backup, like the Valkyrie we saw. So it's 5 generic and 2 black for a 5/5 with Menace. It also has Swamp Cycling for 2, and it has backup too. So is this a bomb? It does leave behind permanent value, and it gives something 2 counters and Menace, right? Those things are pretty good. It gives you some permanent value, but the answer is no, it's not a bomb. And the main reason, pretty much all of these we've looked at do at least have a powerful effect, I guess. Gloomfang Mahler is less so. For the amount of mana you're spending to cast the thing, if you're spending that much mana in Limited or in Magic in general, if for the card to really be good, it has to be really game-altering. And while Gloomfang Mahler was a fine common, the fact that it comes down, puts 2 counters on something, and gives that thing Menace, it's just not enough for what you're spending, and, that keeps it from being anything close to a bomb. Menace is also, way worse than giving Flying First Strike and Lifelink. There are lots of board states where you just can't attack with the thing you put the 2 counters on anyway. So, Menace isn't amazing, but this is merely a solid common and not a bomb, despite the fact that it does leave some permanent value no matter what. All right, the last card I want to look at is Hoarding Broodlord. So for 5 generic and 3 black, it's a 7/6 with flying and Convoke. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke, and when it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a card, exile it face down, and then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. So this is a huge flyer. It's generally not actually going to cost you 8 mana, thanks to Convoke. Playing it on 6 or whatever is very easy and limited. But if that's all it was a big flyer that you could Convoke into play, it wouldn't be a bomb. It would be a big, impressive flyer in certain situations, but it's very easy to deal with. It doesn't give you any sort of permanent value, even if your opponent does deal with it. But that Enter the Battlefield ability does, because that Enter the Battlefield ability will grab you the best card in your entire deck every time, and importantly, some versions of this effect, it doesn't work this way. Importantly, if the Broodlord dies, you still have access to that card. Now, you can't cast that card with Convoke if the Broodlord dies, and that hurts a little, but no matter what, you're getting a 2-for-1 here, and you're talking about forcing your opponent into dealing with one of the biggest, scariest flyers in your deck, and then probably whatever the next best card remaining in your deck is, because you just tutored it up. So the Broodlord is a bomb, gives you a 2-for-1. The card quality will always be quite impressive, and again, if it doesn't die, you can also just Convoke that thing into play, and that combined with the Broodlord is basically always going to overwhelm your opponent. So that's what I think bombs are. They have to have a powerful effect. They have to be good, really, no matter what the game state is, and they have to do something that gives you permanent value, even if your opponent deals with the thing right away. So keep that in mind when you hear people talk about bombs in Limited, especially including me. I mean, obviously, this is exactly my definition of what a bomb is, but I do think, generally speaking, this is the definition people are using when they call cards bombs in Limited. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting me and the channel, you can do that by becoming a channel member or a patron. You can find ways to do those things in the description. Thanks for watching.